They say madness is a choice, a descent, a breaking. I used to believe them. I used to treat them. For 6 months, I walked the sterile, echoing halls of Blackwood Asylum as an orderly. I was 24, fresh out of college, armed with a psychology degree and a dangerous, naive confidence. I believed in diagnoses. I believed in the clear, undeniable lines between sanity and madness. I believed in the power of treatment. Blackwood, with its imposing Gothic architecture, its stained glass windows depicting serene, unseeing figures, and the whispered local legends of its dark past, felt less like a job and more like a proving ground. It was a place where I could truly make a difference, bring order to chaos, a place where I was utterly, terrifyingly wrong. The initial weeks were a blur of new faces and procedures. My uniform, crisp and white, felt like a shield. It was a barrier between my rational mind and the chaos within. I quickly learned the rhythms of the asylum. There were early morning medication rounds, quiet breakfasts took place in the communal dining hall. Patients stared blankly at their plates. Some engaged in animated conversations with invisible companions. Occupational therapy sessions followed. These were filled with the rhythmic click of knitting needles or the dull thud of clay against a pottery wheel. The soft, incessant hum of fluorescent lights filled the air. The distant clatter of meal trays was a constant sound. Occasional muffled cries or sudden piercing screams from a locked ward quickly became the soundtrack to my life. My job was straightforward: dispense medication, assist with meals, ensure patients were safe and accounted for, and fill out endless charts. These charts detailed their moods, their outbursts, their fleeting moments of clarity, or their descent into deeper catatonia. I prided myself on my composure. I maintained my ability to remain detached from the despair and confusion that permeated the very stone of the building. I was a professional. I was an observer. I was an agent of calm in a storm of broken minds. I was convinced that my scientific understanding shielded me from any psychological contagion. I saw it all. Catatonic patients stared at unseen horrors. Their eyes were fixed on empty corners. Their bodies were rigid as statues, sometimes for hours. They seemed frozen mid-scream, their faces contorted in silent agony. There was Mr. Abernathy. He insisted his skin was turning to glass. He refused to move, fearing he might shatter. His eyes were wide with a terror I couldn't comprehend. He constantly wiped at his arms, as if to brush away invisible shards. He muttered about the fragility of existence. And Mrs. Gable. She spent her days meticulously arranging invisible threads into complex patterns. She whispered apologies to the air. She was convinced she was mending the fabric of reality itself. It was a reality only she could perceive. It was a world woven from her own fractured mind, a tapestry of unseen horrors. Then there was young Thomas, barely 18. He would sit for hours meticulously carving tiny, intricate wooden birds. He would then crush them to splinters the moment they were finished. His eyes were wide and vacant. He muttered about the hunger and the silence, as if the birds themselves were screaming. The violently agitated ones. Their screams echoed down the corridors. They were restrained for their own safety and ours. Their thrashing was a constant, unsettling reminder of the raw power of a mind untethered. It was a mind consumed by its own demons. Something clawed from within, demanding release. It demanded recognition, the quiet melancholics. They were lost in their own internal labyrinths. They traced patterns on the walls with vacant stares. Their silence was often more unnerving than any outburst. It hinted at depths of despair I couldn't fathom. They say madness is a choice, a descent, a breaking. I used to believe them. I used to treat them. For 6 months, I walked the sterile, echoing halls of Blackwood Asylum as an orderly. I was 24, fresh out of college, armed with a psychology degree and a dangerous, naive confidence. I believed in diagnoses. I believed in the clear, undeniable lines between sanity and madness. I believed in the power of treatment. Blackwood, with its imposing Gothic architecture, its stained glass windows depicting serene, unseeing figures, and the whispered local legends of its dark past, felt less like a job and more like a proving ground. It was a place where I could truly make a difference, bring order to chaos. A place where I was utterly, terrifyingly wrong. The initial weeks were a blur of new faces and procedures. My uniform, crisp and white, felt like a shield. It was a barrier between my rational mind and the chaos within. I quickly learned the rhythms of the asylum. There were early morning medication rounds. Quiet breakfast took place in the communal dining hall. Patients stared blankly at their plates. Some engaged in animated conversations with invisible companions. Occupational therapy sessions followed. These were filled with the rhythmic click of knitting needles or the dull thud of clay against a pottery wheel. The soft, incessant hum of fluorescent lights filled the air. The distant clatter of meal trays was a constant sound. Occasional muffled cries or sudden, piercing screams from a locked ward quickly became the soundtrack to my life. My job was straightforward: dispense medication, assist with meals, ensure patients were safe and accounted for, and fill out endless charts. These charts detailed their moods, their outbursts, their fleeting moments of clarity, or their descent into deeper catatonia. I prided myself on my composure. I maintained my ability to remain detached from the despair and confusion that permeated the very stone of the building. I was a professional. I was an observer. I was an agent of calm in a storm of broken minds. I was convinced that my scientific understanding shielded me from any psychological contagion. I saw it all. Catatonic patients stared at unseen horrors. They say madness is a choice, a descent, a breaking. I used to believe them, and I used to treat them. For 6 months, I walked the sterile, echoing halls of Blackwood Asylum as an orderly. I was 24, fresh out of college, armed with a psychology degree and a dangerous, naive confidence. I believed in diagnoses. I believed in the clear, undeniable lines between sanity and madness. I believed in the power of treatment. Blackwood, with its imposing Gothic architecture, its stained glass windows depicting serene, unseeing figures, and the whispered local legends of its dark past, felt less like a job and more like a proving ground. It was a place where I could truly make a difference, bring order to chaos, a place where I was utterly, terrifyingly wrong. The initial weeks were a blur of new faces and procedures. My uniform, crisp and white, felt like a shield. It was a barrier between my rational mind and the chaos within. I quickly learned the rhythms of the asylum. There were early morning medication rounds. Quiet breakfasts took place in the communal dining hall. Patients stared blankly at their plates. Some engaged in animated conversations with invisible companions. Occupational therapy sessions followed. These were filled with the rhythmic click of knitting needles or the dull thud of clay against a pottery wheel. The soft, incessant hum of fluorescent lights filled the air. The distant clatter of meal trays was a constant sound. Occasional muffled cries or sudden, piercing screams from a locked ward quickly became the soundtrack to my life. My job was straightforward: dispense medication, assist with meals, ensure patients were safe and accounted for, and fill out endless charts. These charts detailed their moods, their outbursts, their fleeting moments of clarity, or their descent into deeper catatonia. I prided myself on my composure. I maintained my ability to remain detached from the despair and confusion that permeated the very stone of the building. I was a professional. I was an observer. I was an agent of calm in a storm of broken minds. I was convinced that my scientific understanding shielded me from any psychological contagion. Catatonic patients stared at unseen horrors. Their eyes were fixed on empty corners. Their bodies were rigid as statues, sometimes for hours. They seemed frozen mid-scream, their faces contorted in silent agony. There was Mr. Abernathy. He insisted his skin was turning to glass. He refused to move, fearing he might shatter. His eyes were wide with a terror I couldn't comprehend. He constantly wiped at his arms as if to brush away invisible shards. He muttered about the fragility of existence. And Mrs. Gable, she spent her days meticulously arranging invisible threads into complex patterns. She whispered apologies to the air. She was convinced she was mending the fabric of reality itself. It was a reality only she could perceive. It was a world woven from her own fractured mind, a tapestry of unseen horrors. Then there was young Thomas, barely 18. He would sit for hours, meticulously carving tiny, intricate wooden birds. He would then crush them to splinters the moment they were finished. His eyes were wide and vacant. He muttered about the hunger and the silence, as if the birds themselves were screaming. The violently agitated ones. Their screams echoed down the corridors. They were restrained for their own safety and ours. Their thrashing was a constant, unsettling reminder of the raw power of a mind untethered. It was a mind consumed by its own demons, something clawed from within, demanding release. It demanded recognition, the quiet melancholics. They were lost in their own internal labyrinths. They traced patterns on the walls with vacant stares. Their silence was often more unnerving than any outburst. It hinted at depths of despair I couldn't fathom. It was a profound emptiness that seemed to emanate from them. It was a void that threatened to pull you in. It threatened to absorb your own peace. It threatened to leave you as hollow as they were. I learned to distinguish between a genuine cry for help and a manipulative outburst. I learned to distinguish between true delusion and a desperate plea for attention. Or so I thought. My colleagues, a mix of weary veterans and equally green newcomers, mostly kept to themselves. Their faces were etched with varying degrees of fatigue and resignation. We exchanged pleasantries, we shared coffee, we rarely spoke of the deeper, unsettling undercurrents of the place. It was an unspoken rule. You do your job, you go home, and you try not to let Blackwood seep into your bones. No matter how many strange incidents occurred, no matter how many patients spoke of the same impossible things, we filed it away under symptoms. This was a convenient label that kept the inexplicable at bay. It maintained the illusion of control, of normalcy, of sanity. But then the whispers began. They weren't the incoherent ramblings of the patients. Those were unsettling murmurs that filled the background noise of the asylum. They formed a constant, low hum of human distress. These whispers were fainter. They were like dry leaves skittering across a forgotten floor, or the rustle of old paper, or the soft scraping of something unseen. They were always just beyond the reach of clear hearing. They were just at the edge of perception. At first, I dismissed them as auditory fatigue. I thought my brain was playing tricks in the constant low hum of the asylum. Or perhaps it was the echo of my own thoughts, amplified by exhaustion. I'd rub my temples. I'd blame the long shifts. I'd blame the recycled air. I'd blame the sheer mental exhaustion of dealing with so much suffering, so much despair. But they persisted. They started in the periphery of my hearing. It was a faint, almost imperceptible rustle. It grew gradually more defined. It was like someone breathing too close, just out of sight. It was just behind my shoulder. A cold breath on my neck made me instinctively recoil. Sometimes, late at night, patrolling the quieter, older wings, where the shadows stretched long and deep and the air grew noticeably colder, carrying a faint, metallic tang like old iron and blood, I'd swear I heard my name called. It was a soft, drawn-out syllable. Elias. Elias. It would raise the fine hairs on my neck. It sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the asylum's perpetual chill. It was never loud enough to be certain. It was always just a phantom echo. It was a trick of the acoustics, I told myself, clinging desperately to the rational. I clung to the scientific explanations. When I mentioned it to older staff, they just shrugged. Their faces were etched with years of fatigue and a practiced indifference that bordered on weariness, almost a numbness. Just the patience, Elias. They get restless, or the old pipes settling. Blackwood's an old building, son, plays tricks on you. You'll get used to it, or you won't. The last part was always muttered, almost a warning. It was a grim prophecy delivered with a sigh. It was a knowing glance that chilled me more than any ghost story. I accepted their explanations, or pretended to, but the unease lingered. It was a subtle, growing discord in my carefully constructed composure. It was like a single off-key note in a familiar melody. It slowly, steadily twisted it into something dissonant, something wrong, something profoundly unsettling. It was something that whispered of a truth beyond understanding. Then there was Sarah. Sarah was different. She wasn't one of the catatonic or violently agitated patients. She was lucid, often painfully so. Her eyes were clear and intelligent, yet they were filled with a profound, ancient terror that made my stomach clench. It was a terror that seemed to radiate from her very being. It was a palpable aura of dread that permeated the air around her. Her official diagnosis was severe paranoid schizophrenia, but her narratives were too consistent. They were too chillingly specific. They were too interwoven with the very fabric of Blackwood itself. She knew details that seemed impossible for her to know. Details about forgotten patients and hidden rooms. Details about incidents that predated her own admission. Details about the asylum's true purpose. She spoke of the collector. It was a shadow that moved through the walls. It fed on memories. It left behind only echoes and a hollow shell. She described it as a thing of pure void. It was a hunger given form. It was a presence that had no beginning or end. It was only an eternal consumption. It was a silent, ravenous entity that permeated the very air. It was the very air of Blackwood. She'd gripped my arm. Her frail fingers were surprisingly strong. They almost dug into my flesh, leaving faint indentations. She would whisper, her voice raspy, dry as parchment. "He's watching you, Elias. He likes the ones who think they're strong. He likes to break them. He's been here for a long, long time. Before the patients, before the doctors. He was here first. He knows your name now. He hears the whispers too. He's choosing. He'll take your memories, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but the quiet. He'll leave you an empty vessel just like the others. You'll be just like Mr. Abernathy, staring at glass skin, or Mrs. Gable, weaving nothing. He'll take everything that makes you you." She'd point to empty corners. Her eyes were wide with unseeing dread. She would murmur, "He's there, Elias, always there, waiting for you to open the door, waiting for you to see. Don't look too long, Elias. Don't listen too closely. He'll find a way in. He's already found a way in. He's in your dreams, isn't he? He's in your thoughts. He's in your blood now. He's in the hum. He's in the silence. He's in the walls. He's in everything." I dismissed it, of course. Delusions. A vivid, elaborate coping mechanism for a shattered mind. Perhaps even a shared delusion among the more suggestible patients. A kind of institutional folklore. A collective coping mechanism for their confinement, for the horrors of their own minds. I'd gently redirect her. I'd offer her medication. I'd remind her of reality. "There's no collector, Sarah. Just us and the doctors trying to help you. It's the illness talking. It's not real. It's just your mind playing tricks. You're safe here. We'll help you." But her words, her piercing, knowing gaze began to chip away at my composure. They eroded my carefully constructed defenses. It was like acid on metal, dissolving my certainty. I started noticing things that couldn't be explained by fatigue or oversight. Things that defied all logic, all scientific understanding. My keys, left neatly on the central desk in the staff room, would be on the floor, several feet away. Sometimes they were even tucked under a chair. It was as if deliberately moved by unseen hands. It was a subtle, unsettling game designed to unsettle, to make me question my own memory, my own sanity. A patient's drawing depicting a gaunt, impossibly tall, shadowy figure with limbs like stretched wire would appear in a different room than where I'd last seen it. Sometimes it was even taped to the inside of a locker door in the staff changing rooms, where only staff had access. Once, I found a drawing of the same figure taped to the back of my own locker door. A chill ran through me despite the absurdity, the impossible logistics of it. It was a crude, childlike rendering, yet it perfectly captured the terrifying essence Sarah described. It was a stark, undeniable image that now haunted my waking hours. It appeared in the corner of my eye just beyond my direct gaze, small, insignificant anomalies, easily rationalized as pranks or my own forgetfulness, but they accumulated. It was a slow, insidious drip of unease. It began to erode my carefully maintained detachment. It replaced it with a creeping dread that settled deep in my bones. It was a cold, heavy weight that never left me. I found myself checking my back. I glanced into darkened doorways. It was a constant, low-level vigilance, a feeling of being watched, always watched. My reflection in the polished floors seemed distorted. My eyes were too wide, too haunted. It was as if a stranger stared back, a stranger I was slowly becoming. The whispers grew louder. They started to form words, Fragmented sentences seemed to float just behind my ear. They were always just out of focus, like a radio station struggling for reception, or a voice speaking from underwater, or from deep within my own skull. It was a chorus of unseen entities clamoring for my attention. Join us, join the quiet. Elias, let go, you'll be safe. One of us, always here, always waiting for you. We are so many. Become one. Become silence, become whole, become nothing, become Blackwood, become the hum, become the void. They were seductive. They promised a cessation of the gnawing anxiety that was beginning to consume me. They spoke of peace, of understanding, of an end to the struggle, a release from the constant vigilance, a surrender to something greater, something ancient, something inevitable, something that offered ultimate calm, a final profound rest, a true oblivion. Sometimes I'd catch myself almost answering them. It was a strange longing for the silence they promised, a desire to simply surrender to the ethereal chorus, to let the current pull me under, to become part of the quiet, to find solace in the shared void, to escape the torment of my own thoughts, to finally stop fighting, to just be. I found myself becoming withdrawn. I avoided the staff lounge. I preferred the quiet solitude of the empty corridors. There, the whispers felt less intrusive. They were almost familiar, like a secret language only I understood. It was a privilege, a dark initiation, a terrible gift. My colleagues started to look at me differently. Their casual greetings were replaced by concerned glances. Hushed conversations stopped abruptly when I approached. I heard snippets. He's not sleeping well, looks pale, too invested in the patients. He's starting to sound like them. He's burning out, just like the others. He's losing it. The implication hung heavy in the air. It was a silent judgment, a growing distance between me and the world of the sane, a world I felt increasingly alienated from, a world that no longer seemed to understand me or that I no longer understood. I started to lose track of time. The days bled into nights. They were marked only by the change in shifts, by the increasing intensity of the whispers, by the deepening shadows in my mind, by the growing certainty that what Sarah said was true. My sleep became a battleground. Nightmares of endless dark corridors, of unseen presences clawing at my mind, of Sarah's eyes staring at me from the shadows. Her voice echoed, "He's watching you." I'd wake in a cold sweat. I was convinced I wasn't alone in my small, sterile apartment. The shadows in my bedroom seemed to stretch and writhe. They took on impossible forms. They mimicked the very entity Sarah described. They danced just beyond the reach of my conscious thought, just beyond the veil of sleep. They threatened to pull me back into the terror. The lines between my work and my life began to blur. Then they bled into one another. The asylum wasn't just a place I worked. It was a place that was working on me. Slowly, meticulously, it was dismantling my mind, brick by brick, memory by memory, until my own history felt like a foreign concept, a story belonging to someone else. I found myself checking locks twice. I peered into dark corners. I listened for sounds that weren't there. I jumped at every creak of the floorboards, every shift of the house. I was convinced something was lurking just beyond my sight, just out of reach, waiting to pounce, to claim me, to take its piece. My appetite vanished. My once sharp focus dulled. It was replaced by a constant low-level hum of paranoia. Every patient's stare felt like an accusation. Every staff member's whisper a judgment. Every shadow a potential threat. A hiding place for the collector, a gateway to its realm, a portal into true madness. A path I was already walking. I started to see the shadowy figure Sarah described in my peripheral vision. It was a fleeting glimpse of impossible height and thinness. Always just gone when I turned my head, leaving only a lingering chill and the faint scent of ozone, like after a lightning strike, or the air before a storm, or the smell of something ancient and unholy, something that had no right to exist, something that defied all natural law. My obsession turned to the West Wing. It was the oldest part of Blackwood. It was built in the late 1800s. Then it was sealed off decades ago. Its entrance was a heavy, chained iron gate at the end of a forgotten corridor. It was perpetually shrouded in a deeper gloom. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light that penetrated the grimy windows of the main building. They never quite reached the West Wing's entrance. It remained perpetually shrouded in a deeper gloom. It was a place where light itself seemed to die, where shadows clung like hungry parasites. They grew denser, more substantial, almost solid, as if they had a will of their own. Officially, it was condemned due to structural instability. This was a convenient excuse that no one truly believed, especially not the locals who spoke of it in hushed tones. Their voices dropped to a whisper when the West Wing was mentioned. It was as if the very act of speaking its name might summon something, might draw its attention, might invite its hunger. Unofficially, rumors persisted among the older staff, hushed tales of unspeakable experiments, of patients driven truly mad, not by their illnesses, but by the doctors themselves, by the very building, by something inherent in its foundations, something ancient and malevolent, a consciousness that had resided there for centuries, feeding on the despair. They spoke of a Dr. Alistair Finch. He was a pioneer in radical therapies. These involved sensory deprivation, extreme isolation, and experimental psychoactive drugs. He disappeared without a trace in the 1930s. This was shortly before the wing was sealed. His notes, they said, spoke of communing with the deeper consciousness of the institution, of unlocking the true potential of the mind through its dissolution, of the inherent energy of suffering, and of a symbiotic relationship with the building itself. It was as if Blackwood itself were a living, malevolent entity, a vast, sentient prison, a monstrous organism. It was always colder there, even colder than the rest of the asylum, and a profound, suffocating silence hung in the air. It was a silence that felt heavier than any noise, a silence that seemed to swallow sound, to absorb all life, all hope, leaving behind only a chilling void, a perfect stillness that was more terrifying than any scream, for it implied a complete absence of everything. It called to me. It was a dark siren song promising answers, promising an end to the torment of the whispers. It promised truth, a truth that felt increasingly vital to my survival, a truth that I felt I was destined to uncover, a truth that would finally explain everything, and perhaps free me, or at least grant me understanding before my own descent into the same abyss. One night, driven by a desperate, almost feverish need for answers, a need that felt less like curiosity and more like a compulsion, an irresistible pull, a command from the whispers themselves, echoing in my skull, growing louder, more insistent, a clamor for revelation, a promise of ultimate knowledge. I slipped away from my rounds. The old iron gate leading to the West Wing was chained, but the lock, rusted and brittle from years of neglect, snapped with a soft, almost welcoming click under the pressure of my crowbar. The sound echoed unnaturally in the oppressive silence. It was a sound that seemed to reverberate through the very foundations of the asylum. A signal, a chime announcing my arrival, a breach, a violation of an ancient pact, an invitation. The air inside was thick with dust. The scent of decay filled my nostrils, and something else. Something metallic and ancient, like old blood and ozone, mingling with the musty smell of forgotten things and the faint, sweet scent of something sickly organic. Something that made my stomach churn. A smell I couldn't place, yet it felt deeply wrong, deeply unnatural, deeply alive. It was a living stench of corruption. Moonlight filtered through grimy, broken windows high above. It cast long, dancing shadows. They seemed to writhe and stretch with a life of their own, reaching out like skeletal fingers, beckoning me deeper into the labyrinth, into the heart of Blackwood's darkness, into the very maw of the unknown, into the collector's domain, into the place where sanity died. Each shadow felt like a predatory presence, reaching out, beckoning me deeper, urging me onward, guiding my path, pulling me into its embrace, into its trap, into its waiting silence, into its endless hunger. I moved through the derelict rooms. My flashlight beam cut through the gloom. It illuminated rusted beds, overturned furniture, and the ghostly remnants of lives shattered within these walls. The floorboards groaned under my weight. Each creak was amplified in the profound stillness. It was a protest against my intrusion, a warning, a lament, a symphony of forgotten suffering, a chorus of despair. In one room, a child's rocking horse lay on its side, Its painted eyes stared blankly at the ceiling. It was a tiny, unsettling detail. It spoke of forgotten innocence, of lives brought here too young, broken too soon. It was a chilling testament to the asylum's victims, a silent scream frozen in time. In another, a pile of yellowed patient records lay scattered across a cracked linoleum floor. Their ink was faded, but the names were still legible. It was a grim roster of the lost, the vanished, the consumed, the assimilated. I saw Finch's name on several of them. It was always associated with patients who had vanished or whose conditions had inexplicably worsened after his treatments, often ending with a single chilling note transferred to deeper therapy, or subject achieved ultimate quietus, or simply assimilated. Sometimes accompanied by a crude drawing of the shadowy figure, it was a chilling signature, a mark of ownership. There were crude drawings on the walls. They were scratched into the plaster by desperate fingers. Stick figures with elongated limbs, dark, circular mouths, eerily similar to Sarah's descriptions, to the glimpses I'd caught in my periphery, to the nightmares that plagued my sleep, now solidified into waking terror. One entire wall was covered in frantic, repetitive scrawls. They overlapped each other. It was like a desperate prayer or a terrifying warning. He waits, he collects, don't look. He is the quiet, he is the end, he is all. He is Blackwood, he is the silence, he is the hunger, he is the void, he is the truth. He is you, he is everything, and you are nothing. The whispers here were no longer faint. They were all around me, a chorus of hushed voices, like 1,000 secrets trying to escape, swirling just at the edge of my perception, sometimes forming coherent phrases, sometimes overlapping into an indistinguishable din of agony, of terror, of surrender, a symphony of suffering, a chorus of the damned, of those who had already been collected. Their voices were a desperate plea, a terrifying welcome, a final chilling invitation. He's here, he's waiting for you, Elias. He collects the broken ones, the curious ones, the ones who know, the ones who seek. He hungers for your mind, your memories, your very soul. Give yourself to the quiet. Become one. Become nothing. Become part of the hum. Become Blackwood. Become the silence. Become the void. Become the end. The air grew impossibly cold. A biting, unnatural chill seeped into my bones. I could see my breath fogging in front of me, forming tiny clouds that dissipated into the suffocating chill. It was as if the very air, the very life, was being consumed by an unseen entity, leaving only a vacuum, a void, a perfect absolute stillness that screamed of absence, of utter annihilation. Then I saw it, in the deepest, darkest corner of what must have been the common room. It was a vast empty space where patients once gathered, where their last vestiges of sanity might have been stripped away. A shadow detached itself from the wall. It wasn't just a lack of light. It was an absence, a void in the shape of a man, impossibly tall and thin. Its limbs were disproportionately long and spindly, like a spider's, ending in sharp, almost claw-like points. They seemed to scrape against the very fabric of reality, tearing it, unraveling the world, distorting the very air around it. It had no discernible features, just an overwhelming sense of ancient hunger, a gaping maw of nothingness where a face should have been, a black hole that seemed to absorb all light and sound, all hope, all reason, all existence, leaving only its own terrifying presence, its cold, consuming reality. It moved towards me, not walking, but gliding. Its movement was unnaturally smooth, like oil spreading across water, without a sound, without disturbing a single dust mote, without a ripple in the oppressive silence, a silent, inexorable advance, a predator closing in, its form growing more solid, more defined, as it approached. The air around it grew colder, heavier, stealing the very breath from my lungs, pressing down on my chest until I felt I would suffocate, my lungs burning, my vision tunneling, the world narrowing to that single consuming void, that infinite hunger. That ultimate end, that final collector. Come for me, come for my mind, come for my soul. Panic seized me. It was raw and primal. It stripped away all my carefully constructed composure, all my scientific detachment, all my years of education, leaving me a terrified animal, a screaming, helpless thing. I stumbled backward. I tripped over something unseen, a broken chair perhaps, or a forgotten stretcher, or maybe a discarded, hollowed-out memory. One of Finch's victims. A fragment of a soul, a piece of someone's past, now my own. My flashlight clattered to the floor. It plunged the room into near-total darkness, leaving me utterly vulnerable, blind, at its mercy, a lamb to the slaughter. The whispers intensified. Now a deafening cacophony of screams and pleas, all echoing from within the shadow, from within my own head, a chorus of tormented souls, each voice a shard of glass in my mind, shattering my thoughts, driving me to the brink of true madness, to the precipice of oblivion. I scrambled to my feet, my heart hammered against my ribs. It was a frantic drumbeat of terror, and I fled, blindly crashing through the debris, the sound of my own ragged breaths filling my ears, louder than the screams, louder than the pounding in my chest, louder than the world itself. I could feel its cold presence behind me, a chilling breath on my neck, a sensation of something vast and ancient pursuing me, something that had waited patiently for decades, for centuries, for me, for my mind, for my very essence, to be devoured. The air grew impossibly thin. It was as if it was drawing all the oxygen from the room, from my very body, preparing to consume me whole, to add me to its collection, to make me part of its endless silence, its eternal quiet, its profound nothingness. I don't remember much after that, only the frantic, desperate run through the familiar corridors. The shadow gained on me. Its cold presence was a physical weight on my back. The whispers turned into roars in my head, screaming my name. Elias, or ours now. You opened the door. You saw. You belong to Blackwood. You are ours. Welcome home, Elias. Welcome to the quiet. Welcome to your end. Welcome to the collection. I must have been screaming too. A guttural, animalistic sound, stripped of all reason, all humanity. Because the next thing I knew, strong hands were on me, pulling me back, voices shouting, Elias, calm down. What's wrong with you? You're scaring the patients. You're going to hurt yourself. Stop fighting us, Elias. It's just a delusion. It's not real. You're safe. We'll help you. Just calm down. They were my colleagues. Their faces were a blur of concern and alarm. Their grip was firm, restraining me, pulling me away from the darkness I had unveiled, pulling me into a different kind of darkness, the darkness of their disbelief, their judgment, their comforting lies. I could see the fear in their eyes mirroring my own, but it was fear of me, not with me. A chilling realization that only deepened my terror, isolating me further, confirming my new status as one of them, one of the broken, one of the lost. I fought them, thrashing, shouting about the shadow, about the collector, about Sarah and the unspeakable truths hidden in the West Wing, about Dr. Finch and his vanished patients, about the drawings, the cold, the whispers. I tried to explain the absolute undeniable reality of what I had seen, the cold, tangible terror, the ancient evil lurking within Blackwood's walls, the entity that fed on the minds within. But my words came out as a desperate, incoherent torrent, a jumble of half-formed sentences and primal screams. They looked at me with pity, with concern, with the same expressions I had seen on my own face when looking at Sarah, or any of the other patients lost to their own minds. Their faces, once familiar, now seemed distant, judging. Their words muffled, distorted, like I was underwater, or as if their voices were coming from a great distance, from another reality, a reality I was now leaving behind, irrevocably. I heard snippets of their conversations, psychotic break, acute delusion, needs to be sedated immediately, he's gone, another one claimed. The last phrase, though whispered, cut through the haze. It was a chilling confirmation of my fate, a final, damning verdict, a sentence without appeal, a life sentence within these walls. The next time I opened my eyes, the ceiling was familiar. The soft, incessant hum of the fluorescent lights was familiar. The sterile scent was familiar. But the bed was different. It was bolted to the floor. The window had bars, and when the nurse came in, her face was one I recognized. She was a colleague, a kind woman named Margaret, who used to share coffee breaks with me, her smile now tinged with professional sympathy, a practiced, empty kindness that chilled me to the bone. For I knew it was a performance, a facade, a cruel mockery of genuine care, a lie designed to keep me compliant. "Good morning, Elias," she said. Her voice was soft, professional, practiced, as if speaking to a child. "How are we feeling today?" "How are we feeling today? You had quite a night, a very difficult night. We're here to help you get better. You're safe now. You're in good hands. Just rest. Everything will be all right. You'll feel better soon." I tried to tell her, I tried to explain everything about the West Wing, about the Collector, about the terrible, horrifying truth I had uncovered, the truth that had cost me my sanity, my freedom, my very identity. Everything that made me Elias Thorne, a rational, scientific man. I pointed frantically to the corner of the room. There I could still see the faint, shimmering outline of the shadow. Watching. Its form was almost transparent now, but undeniably there. A silent, patient sentinel, a constant reminder of my folly, of my irreversible mistake, of the horror that had followed me. "It's still here, Margaret. Don't you see it? It followed me. It's in the room. It's watching us. It wants us all. It wants you. It's Blackwood itself. It's the building. It's alive. It's feeding." But my words came out jumbled, frantic, laced with a desperation that I could hear sounded exactly like madness. The words tangled in my throat, refusing to form coherent sentences, betraying me, confirming their diagnosis, sealing my fate, trapping me within these walls, within this new, terrifying reality, a reality where only I could see the truth, a truth that condemned me. She just nodded. Her eyes were distant, already moving on. "Time for your medication, dear." She placed a small paper cup with 2 pills in my hand, one white, one blue. I swallowed them. The bitter taste was a final, undeniable confirmation of my new reality. The world began to soften. The edges blurred, the whispers receded to a manageable hum, a dull roar in the background of my mind. The shadow in the corner seemed to fade. But I knew it was still there, just out of sight, waiting, always present, a silent, patient hunter, biding its time, observing its new acquisition, its new addition to the collection. Now I sit in this room, the same room I used to check on patients, the same room where I once recorded their delusions. The whispers are constant now, a low, insidious hum that never leaves me. They are clearer than before, sometimes even coherent, sometimes even comforting in their familiarity. It is a chorus of voices that understand, that share my burden, my curse. "You belong here, Elias. You always did. We are all collected. Eventually, there is no escape, only acceptance, only peace in the quiet. Join us. Join the silence. Become one with Blackwood. Become one with us. Become part of the hum forever. Become the quiet. Become the void." I see the other patients. Their eyes are wide with their own unseen terrors. Their movements are jerky or unnaturally still. Their blank stares now mirror my own. They reflect the same profound horror, the same vacant despair, the same slow, inevitable dissolution of self. And I understand them now, truly understand them, in a way I never could as an orderly. Their screams are my screams, their whispers are my whispers, their madness is my madness. We are the collected, bound by the presence that stalks these halls, a silent shepherd gathering its flock, fattening them for consumption, for the ultimate quietus, for the final silence. Sarah sometimes passes my door, her eyes meet mine, and a flicker of recognition, of shared horror, passes between us. She doesn't speak of the collector anymore, but her silence is louder than any words. It is a knowing, complicit silence, a shared understanding of our inescapable doom, a bond forged in terror, a silent pact, a shared fate. I see the new orderlies, young and confident, just like I was. They walk the halls with that same detached professionalism. Their uniforms are crisp, their eyes are bright with ambition, completely unaware of the true nature of Blackwood, of the insidious force that feeds upon its inhabitants, slowly consuming their minds, one by one, adding them to its silent chorus. They dismiss the odd sounds, the misplaced items, the patient's frantic warnings as mere symptoms of illness, as the ravings of the insane, as things to be medicated away, to be ignored, to be filed and forgotten. And sometimes, late at night, as they pass my door, their flashlights cut through the gloom. I see it in their eyes, that fleeting flicker of doubt, that momentary glance into an empty corner, that subtle shift in their composure. A slight tremor in their hands as they sign off on a chart, a quick nervous glance over their shoulder, a nascent fear, a seed of doubt planted, a sign that the whispers are finding new ears, a sign that the collector is choosing its next target, preparing to welcome another into its silent, eternal collection. Another file to add to its archives of the broken, the lost, the consumed, another soul to join the chorus of the quiet, to become part of the hum, to become one with Blackwood, to become one with us. I see the shadow too sometimes. It stands at the edge of my vision, watching, waiting, perhaps for the next one to come seeking answers, to open the wrong door, to delve too deep into Blackwood's secrets, to break the unspoken rule, to become curious, to become aware. Perhaps for me to finally join the quiet, to become a hollow shell for the collector, a permanent resident in its endless gallery of stolen minds. My own memories are fading now, replaced by echoes of the asylum's past, by the whispers of the collected, by the cold, vast emptiness that promises to consume me entirely. The lines between what was real and what is now are gone. There is only Blackwood and the collector, and the endless silent hum that is now the only constant in my world, the only truth, the only reality. I am no longer Elias Thorne, orderly. I am just another voice in the chorus, another memory for the collector, another piece of the quiet, another fragment of Blackwood. My name, too, will soon be assimilated. It will be just another whisper in the endless hum.